Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast presented by Xfinity. We talk about the NBA, which we are doing on Tuesday evening / Wednesday morning, about 1 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday morning. Joining me from down the street here in New York City, where we attended the Game 5 at the Madison Square Garden, which was hopping tonight, Mr. Tim Bontemps.
Hello, Brian. Very excited night at the Garden for everybody.
It was a very exciting night at the Garden.
A lot of people at the Garden, MacMahon. We saw K-Bon and my sister went to attend the game today, and there were a lot of windy shout outs, a lot of windy selfies, a lot of grumpy windy as a result.
I love it.
Bontemps, well, first off, joining us from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, where he'll be covering Game 5 of the very interesting Thunder Maverick series on Wednesdays, Ben MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. Oh, Bontemps getting wifey playoff tickets. Great. Just great.
Well, my sister took care of that. My sister took care of that.
Glad the IT department can hear that.
Tim and I went to get dinner before the game, in the concourse, and we ran into like two significantly powerful agents.
Ooh.
Just in the hallway.
It's true.
It was
we did.
Very New York experience. Not to mention,
be listening to the pod.
The dozens and dozens of celebrities who were there, including Perk,
and you
had his celebrity turn.
Trust me, on the concourse, there was no bigger celebrity than Brian Windhorst, who got a lot of selfie requests as we went around, and a lot of pod shout outs. Thanks to everybody who shout out the pod.
Not as many as an average 15-minute walk in Manila. Trust me. All right. We will talk about Knicks Pacers, which was lopsided, much to the delight of the Knicks fans here in a minute. First, I think we need to talk about the pivotal game in Denver, the Nuggets beating the Timberwolves by 15. We could analyze what happened with the Timberwolves here. Didn't have Mike Conley with an Achilles injury. Jokic was absolutely jaw-dropping, especially in the second half.
That's the analysis.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Listen, the guy who got his third MVP trophy in 4 years is the best player in the world, and it's not really that close right now. And he provided further evidence tonight with what did he end up with?
So here's the line. 40 points, 13 assists, 7 rebounds, shot 15 for 22 from the field. He had 2 steals. He had 1 block. He had no turnovers. He was plus 21 in 41 minutes.
8-9 against Gobert.
Yeah.
And look, Gobert's going to get hammered. Oh, the defensive player, 4-time defensive player of the year. He got exposed. Cool. As long as you say that Bam Adebayo got exposed in the finals last year, Anthony Davis got exposed in the Western Conference Finals, and on down the list, the simple fact of the matter is this. There is not a human being alive who can deal with Joker when Joker's got it cooking. And tonight just provided further evidence of that.
Look, we talked the other day about these game 4s and the situation that Denver was in, right? Down 2-1, quite favored on the road. How do you perform in that moment? Denver stepped up big in that moment. The other games that are like that are these 2-2 game 5s, right? Usually pretty taut affairs. And these are the kind of games where legends are made. When you look at the 2 games tonight, I know we're going to talk about the Knicks in a bit. Jalen Brunson has 44 points, carries the Knicks to a win when there were a lot of people wondering, including a lot of people in the building tonight, how is this going to go? Are the Knicks out of gas? And it was a week ago that we were talking about how Denver was cooked, how Anthony Edwards was ascending, how he was becoming Michael Jordan, how they might win the title, what's going to happen with the Nuggets going forward. And all Denver has done, and all Nikola Jokic has done, is reel off 3 straight wins and answered every question and look like the team that they have been, frankly, in the minds of most of us all year, right? All year long, we've said these guys are the best team. They should win the title until somebody can actually knock them off the perch. And Minnesota, going back to last year, was a team we thought might be able to do it. was built maybe to do it and gave him everything that could handle through a couple games. And yeah, look, obviously Mike Conley being out was huge. And I think you saw his absence, particularly in the moments when Minnesota lost a little bit emotionally there in that third quarter. But it wouldn't have mattered if Mike Conley was out there in the third quarter and their emotions were good, because Nikola Jokic had one of the great quarters you're ever going to see and said, my team is going to win this game, and put a stranglehold on this series. And there was nothing Minnesota could do about it.
I definitely think in games 1 and 2 that the Jamal Murray's, like, he was a little bit limited.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the calf injury, and so the pressure that Minnesota applied was a little bit more effective. After the 3 days off between 2 and 3, he had more bounce, and he was able to handle the pressure a little bit better. But I don't think materially, I mean, maybe Chris Finch would disagree. He knows his team better than me. I don't think materially the Wolves have stopped defending. I just think the Nuggets, understanding what they were up against, have just turned it up. And the way that they're playing offense. Yeah, the way they're playing offense.
I mean, like, think about the shots that Joker's making.
Like, these are circus shots.
Dude, the 3 that he made over Gobert, you could not contest a 3 better than that was contested, and he just swished it. I mean,
7-2 guy stuck his hand straight up in the air about a foot in front of him, and he just does this and shoots it 7,000 feet in the air, and it just drops right through the net.
And all the shots he makes in the lane, the spins, the pump fakes, the left hand, right hand, whatever. Like, the guy is just one of the best players of all time. That is not hyperbole. That is fact. He showed it again tonight. No Conley hurts. It made it easier to throw a second body at Ant. Ant had an off night. Whatever. With Joker playing like that, the Wolves ain't beating the Nuggets. Neither is anybody else in the league.
The Nuggets went. So sometimes when a team is on the road and behind, they can have a little bit of a bounce early in the third quarter. That actually happened for the Pacers tonight as well, because the fans are out of the building, and the third quarter, there's always low energy in the building. I mean, they're out of the bowl. And a team that feels the urgency can push back. The same thing happened with the Pacers and the Wolves. And the Nuggets were a little sluggish coming out of half because they had the lead, and the Wolves actually briefly took the lead in the third quarter. And then the Nuggets made 13 of their last 14 shots in the third quarter. 13 of 14, and Jokic was all over it. And 40 points, 10 at least 10 assists, no turnovers. It's only happened twice in the last 45 years since they started tracking turnovers. Chris Paul did it about 6 years ago, and Jokic tonight. That was after his brilliant fourth quarter in Game 4, where he had 16 points in the fourth quarter.
By the way, 40 points, 10 assists by a center in the playoffs. It's happened twice.
He ain't no center.
Well.
He's
a
center.
Then it's never happened, because he's the only one who's ever done it.
He's a point guard center slash.
Well, he's a center.
He did it against the Suns last season. That's the only 2 times a guy listed at center has done that.
That's right. He's the greatest passing big man of all time. And just as a reminder, this is the list of people who have won 3 or more MVPs ever: Kareem, Russell, Jordan, Chamberlain, LeBron, Moses Malone, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and now Nikola Jokic. That is the list of guys. Like, you were talking about a guy, as we talked about last year when he won the title, 2 MVPs and a title and a Finals MVP. The list of those is pretty small. Now he's got 3 in a few weeks. Maybe he's got 2 titles. Maybe he's got 2 Finals MVPs. That list is even smaller. I mean, like MacMahon said before, we're talking about flat out one of the best players to ever play. And this run right here, like, look, last year they were never really tested. They cruised through the playoffs. They went 16-5. People could say they had a soft run. They didn't play anybody dominant team. They curb stomped everybody that came in their way. This is the first time in the last couple of years they've been tested truly, and they responded with 3 massively impressive games in a row, and have got themselves on the verge of getting back to the West Finals as a result.
I mean, you could say they were tested by the Suns last year. The Suns also won a couple games. Ishbia had that great tie up and flop to draw the technical foul. We got smoked.
I would say
in 2
that
games.
I would say that series did not ever feel out of Denver's control.
Well, it was 2-2 though, and
It was
crazy in the great Ishbia defensive performance game. The Suns held Joker to 53 points and 11 assists in that game. But then he comes back the next 2 games, and by the way, DeAndre Ayton, those ribs kept him out of that finale. But next 2 games averaged a cool 30, 11 and a half, and 12. I mean, it's just he's the best player in the league. That's all that really needs to be said about the Nikola Jokic experience right now.
So the Nuggets dealt with Ant Edwards, who has 2 40-point games in this series, by double teaming him tonight.
Mm-hmm.
They double teamed him 34 times. As a result, he went 5 of 15 shooting. So that was a wrinkle that Michael Malone threw in there. Obviously was effective. Karl Towns did have 23 points and a bounce back from his poor offensive game 4. One of the other things that was so effective in games 1 and 2 for Minnesota, they shot over 50% in both games.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to defend and get your defense set when you're not going back in transition. And they didn't shoot the ball poorly tonight, other than Ant. But they haven't been able to score like they did in games 1 and 2. And it's very basic analysis that if you don't score, it's harder to defend, because when you take in the ball to the basket, it's easier to set up your team. The other thing is it's also advantageous to get free throws. Free throws are one of the easiest things to defend off of. And
you mean to score off of?
To defend off of. It's easy to score off of too.
I hear you
under 70%, which they did. But it's very easy to set your defense. You can even send your big guys back if you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to set it up. And they haven't been able to get the free throws like they did in the first 2 games. I will say this. It's hard to beat a team 3 times on their own floor in a series, which Denver just proved. If Minnesota can scratch out game 6, and I have no idea where Mike Conley's Achilles is going to be, I'd love to see Ant Edwards playing in a game 7. I think in Denver, Nuggets are heavy favorites, probably do some damage to them, but I would love to see Ant have a game 7. So privately, I'm hoping that happens, because
I wouldn't say you're doing it privately. You just announced it to the world on the pod.
That's fair point.
A great series like this would be fun if it goes 7, but you look at the way Denver's controlled these 3 games, and it certainly feels like they're going to go into game 6 and win. I just feel terrible for Mike Conley. He has talked a lot about how he's late in his career. He's not going to get a lot more opportunities at a run like this, and it just sucks to see. Obviously, we got more injuries to talk about later in the pod too, but it just sucks to see a guy be missing a game like this with an Achilles injury. I mean, it's just a real bummer. And it's not it's not to take anything away from the way Denver played, but just would love to see him out there.
Again, it makes it easier to double Ant, that's for sure. But Mike Conley's not going to.
He ain't stopping Jokic.
Yeah, he's not going to be the answer to slow down Joker. If Gobert can't do it, nobody can, and Gobert had no chance. The first couple games Gobert played in the series, Joker was 11 of 28 when he was the primary defender. So it's not like it's just been no chance ever. But tonight,
look, Jokic
8 and 9, and it was
just turned it up.
I mean, it was impossible.
It's just championship and legendary kind of performances from him.
Here's a whiz of the quiz for you. Gobert was 7 of 7 from the floor. And so he ends up with 18 and 11 on perfect field goal shooting. You guys might have scanned.
Wait a minute. Wait. 7 of 7.
Yeah. Gobert didn't miss a shot.
Oh, Gobert.
Yes.
Yes.
Joker didn't miss many. He missed a couple.
Just to be clear.
He took more than 7. But
Rudy ate Jokic's lunch on the other end of the court.
that'll be the talk tomorrow.
Yeah.
Who was the last person to go 7 of 7 or better with a playoff double-double?
Probably Wilt Chamberlain.
No.
I'm going to say Shaq.
a similar legend, the number 1 overall pick,
Hakeem?
Ben Simmons.
Oh,
Oh, he set us up for that one.
should have said another LSU guy. Would have got Ben Simmons then maybe.
Set us up for that one. Hats off to the Nuggets. I don't think there's any slowing them down, but
I agree.
It's when you think you assume something, that's when you get egg on your face in the NBA. All right, to the
especially
Garden.
when you assume the defending champions are getting swept.
We got a Windhorst prediction. We got a Windhorst prediction that Denver's going to win the series. So we knew this was going to happen days ago.
No, but I said especially when you assume the defending champs getting swept. Like, that's a pretty good way to look foolish.
That's also true.
That's true. All right, to the Garden. Man, what a great we mentioned a minute ago. What a great atmosphere in the Garden tonight.
There is no better place to watch a basketball game.
Yeah, and they were keyed up, 8:00 start, so it was a little bit later.
And there was a lot of tense feelings in the building. I mean, the Knicks, we talked about it on the pod Sunday night. There were 2 questions coming into this game. Were the Knicks going to have any energy, or were they just out? And how would Jalen Brunson look? I think you said it, MacMahon. Like, we caught going into the series, probably going to be determined by which point guard was the better player. Past couple games, Tyrese Halliburton had been great. Tonight, Josh Hart looked like he didn't have a ton of energy, at least for a lot of the game. But Isaiah Hartenstein had a ton. So did everybody else on the Knicks. And Jalen Brunson was absolutely spectacular again. And saw a stat during the game. He had 28 in the first half today. He now has 7 20-point halves in these playoffs through, I guess, 11 games so far. Carmelo Anthony, his entire Knicks tenure, one of many Knicks greats in the arena tonight, had 6. So
by the way,
that sums up the way that Jalen is playing at the moment.
So the Knicks, they've got celebrity row all down the sideline, front row.
That's where you sat?
Oh, yeah. They put the Knick greats along the baseline. And, Marbury, Larry
I wouldn't
Johnson,
start with Stephon Marbury. I would start with Patrick Ewing and Coach
Patrick Ewing, not in any order. Yes. John Starks.
Charles Oakley make it?
Charles Oakley did not make it.
He did not. And these guys, like, during the game are like shouting instructions and sometimes standing up.
They are into it.
Standing up, like yelling, not yelling like in a bad way, but like yelling instructions to the players.
No, they're into it.
I'm not sure Tibbs is looking for help from over there on the once a Knick, always a Knick row there.
Well, he was yelling at those guys 25 years ago when he was an assistant coach. I'm sure he'll yell at them again.
Well, those guys are up almost on the baseline. I mean, they could be a 6th defender.
Yeah, I mean, John Starks in particular has been out of his mind since the start of the playoffs. He went down to Philly and was getting into it with Sixers during the first round. He's been fully into it. But look, I mean, obviously the Knicks are a win away from making the conference finals for the first time in 24 years since the year 2000. They haven't gotten this close to doing it since they were in it. I believe it was also a 2-2 series. Might have been down 3-1 against Indiana back in 2013 with Carmelo. And then they lost when Carmelo got stoned at the rim by Roy Hibbert.
Yeah, they lost that series 4-2. So tonight, Tibbs made so Rick Carlisle kind of won the strategy battle in games 3 and 4 by putting Aaron Nesmith onto Jalen Brunson. That was a key matchup for a bunch of reasons. We talked about it over the weekend. This strategy in this series has largely revolved around Jalen Brunson. And so Tibbs made a move back. And the big thing that he did was he put Deuce McBride into the starting lineup, replacing Precious Achiuwa. So therefore, the Knicks basically starting small with Josh Hart functionally playing power forward. And
more or less match in Indiana, which is generally always playing small.
Well, it's definitely time for the reliable connection presented by Xfinity. And that was, no doubt, Miles Deuce McBride and Jalen Brunson on Tuesday night. So, Bontemps, you talked before, when OG Anunoby got injured, you talked about how you thought this is the lineup they would go to. They didn't. They went with Achua in the first 2 games without Anunoby. Instantaneous difference with Deuce McBride in this game. And not just because he had, well, first off, I'm going to tell you one thing. It was like, when you play video games and they're, you got the guy, some of the guys have you put a guy who has a full bar of power and he's moving faster. Like he hadn't played all those minutes. So instantaneously Deuce, he's quick anyway, but he was just moving faster than everybody. You could tangibly tell how much more life he had in his legs. That is number one. Number two, Bontemps, it changed the way the Pacers had to defend. And this lineup is something you thought that Tibbs would go to earlier.
Yeah, I mean, during the regular season, this starting 5 or this 5-man group, when they were without Julius Randle, OG Anunoby, and Mitchell Robinson, they went to this group a bunch of Jalen Brunson, Deuce McBride, Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, and Isaiah Hartenstein. It absolutely throttled teams. That had crazy plus minus. It was a super lineup. And I thought they would go to it because Indiana's generally playing small. They're starting Andrew Nembhard. They're playing him and Halliburton together a lot. They're playing TJ McConnell out there with those guys. Tibbs initially did decide to go big. I don't think he generally likes the Pascal Siakam, Josh Hart matchup. Siakam's had a pretty good time of it against Hart. But you looked in this game, the Knicks ran a million guard screening actions to get Jalen Brunson onto Andrew Nembhard, who he has.
I will give you the exact number.
Series.
In fact,
got there. What do you got?
Thanks to Stats Williams. So the most ball screens, in other words, you're setting a screen for the guy who's got the ball.
Mm-hmm.
The most ball screens Deuce McBride had set in his career in one game was 8. Okay, because he's
first quarter today.
He's 6'2",
Maybe.
and you don't typically have guard to guard screens. You typically have the big man or a wing or a big man setting a screen for a smaller player and let the ball handler work. You sometimes see big to big screens, but guard to guard screens, anecdotally, are the most rare screens that you have. Well, the problem that the Knicks had, and we're trying to figure out, was Nesmith was just all over Brunson.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose you could have had Isaiah Hartenstein go down there to half court and just blast Nesmith off of Brunson and to free up the pressure. But then Hartenstein is 40 feet from the basket and you need him down there. That's not effective. That's not a super effective strategy. Maybe you can do that once or twice. The other option could be you have somebody else bring the ball up the court so that Brunson doesn't face that pressure. But, the Knicks, Brunson's their best ball handler. I mean, Josh Hart can do it. McBride himself can do it, but you're doing lesser than. So what Tibbs did was had McBride set the screen. So McBride's man was Andrew Nembhard, the guy that they took off of Jalen Brunson.
The guy Brunson lit up.
That's right.
Games.
Barbecue chicken.
So out comes McBride. First off, they're just a better shooting lineup with them out there, and you can spread the floor a little bit better. Secondly, when McBride sets the screen, Nembhard's going to switch, and all of a sudden, the Knicks have remanufactured the matchup they want, which is Nembhard. So getting back to it, McBride, the most ball screens he'd set in a game in his career before tonight was 8. He set 23.
Yeah,
and I don't have how many
like
were for Brunson.
Matchup?
I don't know how many they had for Brunson, but I'll bet it was at least 20.
Well,
I was going to say, I'll set the over at 20.5.
Well, and the other thing too, you mentioned the shooting. I just want to highlight that real quick. I thought that if you have Precious out there with Josh Hart and Isaiah Hartenstein, you don't have very much shooting on the court. It's really just Jalen Brunson and Dante DiVincenzo, right? You can load up, in particular on Jalen, then makes life a lot more difficult for him. Deuce McBride being out there, he's a big-time three-point shooter at this point. He's somebody they're going to have to guard. You've got that extra shooting element out there. Really changes the geometry of the court. And I think that played, a real role because you can't just run away from him to go attack Jalen. Like, you have to respect his ability to shoot the ball. And I think that also played a big role beyond the obvious. We were talking about it first couple of minutes of the game. It was obvious what they were doing right off the jump.
So the other thing that is they put McBride on Halliburton defensively, which we'll talk about in a second. So a couple things happened right out of the gate when this was going on. First off, McBride was getting open because Neesmith was trying to sort of hedge back and, still try to deal, even though he was getting screened, still try to deal with Brunson. And so McBride was getting wide open shots and he started hitting them, made a couple of baskets right out of the gate, had 17 for the game. And once Brunson started going, Rick Carlisle's counter move was to double team Brunson so that when the screen would come up, instead of him ending up with Nembhard on him, they would just trap him. And that is something that Brunson and the Knicks are comfortable with.
Well, and they were garbage double teams. They were slow.
That's true.
They were not purposeful with it. They would kind of meander over and just let Jalen throw.
They're not
the ball
a good defensive
top.
team, and it showed up in the way they double teamed.
Yes, 100%.
And so they would then play 4-on-3, and a couple of things happened there. One, it generated open looks for McBride and Hart and DiVincenzo. And those guys, other than DiVincenzo, has gone ice cold, but those guys started making threes. And even Alec Burks later on. Alec Burks came off the bench, who's been a revelation in this series, hit 5 threes. Yeah. The other thing is when you're playing 4-3, and one of those guys is Isaiah Hartenstein, when you do miss, Hartenstein, it's a 4-on-3 game, and Hartenstein is an absolute demon.
One of them.
Yes,
the man had 12 offensive rebounds.
I mean, for most 12. Of the first. Yes, I mean you could see from again. We had the two questions: how's Jalen going to look, and are the Knicks going to have energy? The tone of the game was set in the first 2 minutes of the game when Isaiah Hartenstein had 17 offensive rebounds and a couple of blocks, and was just shot out of an absolute cannon in the first 2 minutes of the game, and he set the tone for how the night was going to go. And look, you knew with the Garden crowd, you had a pretty good idea that the Knicks were going to have some energy today playing at home. But Hartenstein talked after game 4 about how their effort was not acceptable, and he stepped up and delivered above and beyond what you could have hoped for if you were a Knicks fan. And it just, like right from the beginning of the game, they set the tone of how they were going to play. And Indiana, across the board, did not handle it at all. And I mean, I think you're going to talk about it now, Brian. I think that certainly includes Tyrese Haliburton, who we've talked about a ton on the pod and has had some great games in the series and did not do a whole lot today.
So what was happening was Hartenstein was not only getting rebounds, he was then making passes to guys who were hitting shots. And, the other day, Tyrese Haliburton said that when you're in the Garden, when the Knicks get an offensive rebound and kick it out for a 3, that the effect that it has on the crowd, because they react so positively to the Knicks getting an offensive rebound, that it's like the same as like a windmill dunk. Like that's how the crowd reacts, because that's what they've used to watch all year. And so Hartenstein had 17 rebounds and 5 assists, bunch of those, assists setting up threes. The last player in a playoff game to have 12 offensive rebounds and 5 assists. Did you guys see this one?
I did not.
Oh,
Moses Malone.
Malone.
Should have assumed
1982.
that.
Moses
That's
Malone,
a pretty good company to be in.
Greatest offensive rebounder in history. Pretty much an unbreakable offensive rebounding record for a career, especially if you include his ABA numbers. We've gone over this before.
Yeah, it's laughable. And by the way, to that end, the way Isaiah Hartenstein played was a huge part of why the Knicks had 29 more shots.
This is just an unbelievable stat. Exactly. It's the biggest shot differential in the playoffs since 2008. 29 more shots, 53 to 29 on rebounds. I mean, come on, you can't win. 20 to 5 offensive rebounds, second chance points, 26 to 9. Paint points 62 to 36. I mean, Rick Carlisle said after the game, he says this was an embarrassing performance. And
which
he
ref
just said,
did he
look,
blame?
He said nobody on our team. What's that? What he said? What did you say?
Which ref did he blame?
He didn't blame any ref.
Oh, okay.
I thought
Scott Foster was in the building, and
I thought this quote from Rick Carlisle summed up the whole night. He got asked after the game if losing the rebounding battle was a, quote, technique thing. Technique? It was box outs for sure. Look, it's just cold-blooded desire to go get the ball, to make contact with somebody and go get the ball. That's what it is, and we did not do it, so we paid a heavy price. And that sums up the game. The Knicks met the moment, responded to the crowd, and played like their heads were on fire the whole game. And the Pacers didn't handle it. They just across the board. Tyrese Halliburton was invisible. The Pacers were they lost their emotions on multiple occasions. They didn't handle the moment very well. And as a result, this turned into a bloodbath.
Also, just a reminder, there's really like momentum game to game, I don't think is much of a thing in the playoffs, right?
No.
The Pacers absolutely just clobbered them. I mean, humiliated them on.
And that game was over 8 minutes into the game on Sunday.
Yeah, on Sunday afternoon. And it's not like you take that 40-point lead or whatever it ended up being.
Right, and swing it over.
On the road with you. And completely different game. And game 6 will be its own entity. And we'll see how the Pacers respond.
Yeah, and they're going to have a better strategy to deal with the guard-to-guard pick and rolls, especially with McBride. And if they do double Brunson, they can't half bleep it. But no. I mean, I think we can, considering the Hartenstein numbers, and by the way, we didn't even say it. I mean, Jalen had 44.
And there's points. All kinds of numbers now where it's like, it's a short list where it's Michael Jordan, Jerry West, Jalen Brunson, and depending on what the stat is, there might be like a Bernard King and somebody else in there. But what he's doing with these 40-point games, it's 5 now in the playoffs. I mean, it's insane.
Well, this is a Habistro stat. We'll give our guy Tom Habistro some credit.
Who?
Since 1990, there are 4 guys who've scored at least 373 points, which is a random number I know, through 11 games, about 33 points a game or so. Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Jalen Brunson. It's pretty good. It's pretty good company for Mr. Brunson to be in.
Yeah, and so we'll make McBride and Brunson our reliable connection today, brought to you by Xfinity, and with a leading or a supporting role by Isaiah Hartenstein. The Villanova boys have cooled off a little bit.
And now they get an extra couple days off, which is going to be pretty vital for these Knicks guys who are absolutely gassed. I mean, it's going to be big for them to have 2 days off, thanks to Caitlin Clark having her debut at home on Thursday. Get an extra day, get some rest, and we'll see how this thing goes Friday night. I mean, obviously they're going to pod again on Thursday, but Indiana hasn't lost at home yet in the playoffs, and certainly played well in the 2 games there. And it's also going to be, if the Pacers win that game, it's a very quick turnaround to game 7. And I think, despite the fact that Indiana hasn't looked great at the Garden in this series, I think that favors Indiana, given how beat up the Knicks are at this point. So, obviously you like having game 7 at home, but the Knicks, I think, would be very wise to try to close this thing out Friday and get this thing over with.
Absolutely. All right, MacMahon, you're back in OKC. Made the arduous journey back up 35 in an airplane.
Got that first class upgrade, baby. 30 minutes a day.
Attaboy.
There you go.
I can't believe that those seats that the people don't pay the premium for the 30
Grant Hill was in first class. I think he paid for it, though.
Oh, I think TNT might have paid for it. I really thought, I was prepared to think that Dallas was really doing something special in the first half of that game on Monday night.
Defensively, it was as impressive, a swarming, athletic, swatting everything in sight performance as I've seen in a while.
How many points did Oklahoma City have in the first half? Did they crack 40? If they did, they got 41.
It was low 40s and then 65 after 3 quarters.
Oh.
35 in the fourth quarter when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander basically said, fellas, we're not losing this game. Let me take over. He had kept them within reasonable sniffing distance. And then he had this stretch in the fourth quarter where he scores on 4 straight possessions. And it's like each shot was a little bit tougher than the last one. The sequence ended with him. He's behind the backboard on the baseline, shoots it, lofts that thing over the top over that corner of the backboard, swish, that ties the game. And then what does he do from that point? He's cooking. Defense is collapsing on him. Well, boom, sprays it out to Chet. Wide open three. That's the go-ahead bucket. Put him ahead for good.
That was a huge play.
Whipped it out to Lou Dort on the other side. A couple possessions later, Lou Dort was frigid for most of this game. I mean, like not just bricks. There were some air balls. Nope. Lou Dort swishes this one. Boom. Gets a steal. Look ahead pass. Hits Jalen Williams. And it was an incredible display of an MVP finalist who was taking over a game, but then Mark Daigneault just was gushing about how he found the right blend of taking over and trusting his teammates. And Shea talked about how that's something where he's tried to develop a feel, but it's something that's it's a challenge for any superstar, and he didn't strike that right balance in Game 3. We talked about how ISO crazy he was in Game 3, and it was funny. Game 3, they were down 3 with about a minute left, just over a minute left, and he took a 100-mile-per-hour transition pull-up 3 to try to tie it. And I asked him after that game, what'd you think of that shot? No, I liked it. That's a go-to shot for me. And then after Game 4. He mentioned that he felt like he forced that one. I'm like, you told me you liked it a couple of days ago. He said, yeah, I changed my mind. I looked at it, reconsidered. But in this one, it was like the perfect balance of this is a 25-year-old superstar, unbelievable poise, unbelievable skill and shot making. And then he, like I said, just found the exact right balance of when to spray it out to his teammates, when to put the ball in their hands, when to set them up. The biggest plays he made in a 34-point mid-range masterpiece were passes. So he did not have a single bucket in the restricted area. He did not have a three-pointer. The last guy to score 34 or more in a playoff game, nothing in the restricted area, no threes. Fellas, this is not going to make me any friends in my neighborhood in Dallas. Not
Bob
that I have
Pettit?
anyway. Not Bob Pettit. Think Dallas playoff pain.
Dwayne Wade.
2006 finals, Dwayne Wade. That's the last guy to score.
He got a few
34
free
more.
throws, though, didn't he?
Those are all the mid-range.
He had a whole lot of free throws.
Those are in the mid-range too.
Fellas, I should have known. No, I was at shoot around, and I had a decent feeling for Luka. Didn't come through. Luka switched a half-court shot, but that's not that unusual, though. He does that a lot. Then there's the Oklahoma City shoot around, and 2 balls got stuck in the net. You know what that means.
Cojones.
And Bismack Biyombo was standing under the basket or standing on the lane. What happened? He said, "Big cojones." He said that. That's a direct quote. And then like a minute later, it happened again. So there was foreshadowing of cojones. And then I did not see Shea when he arrived at the arena. I did not see his fit until post game. Did you boys see his fit?
I did.
It was all white.
I did see it.
It was an all white. I'm not sure
Like the
what design
Messiah.
it was. I'm sure. Well, no.
Like
That's not what he was going for. I'm sure it was some fancy designer I didn't ask. Poor reporter.
Oh,
but
God.
it was all white, but there was a trench coat. And he's walking out after his press conference. And I said, kind of gives me an Omar vibe. You know Omar.
Vizquel?
Yes.
No.
From the wire. From the wire.
Omar is coming.
Scale.
Do the little whistle.
Yeah, well, Omar was carrying a firearm.
Oh, so was Shea. I said, it kind of gave me an Omar vibe. And he says, you see what I was going for.
They have the wire up in Canada?
They apparently do.
The wire doesn't exist outside the United States, believe it or not.
Yeah, he walked softly and carried a big old gun in that trench coat.
Well, are we worried about how much of this is Lou Dort and the Thunder defense and Chet Holmgren, who I think the Mavericks were 1-14 when they went up against him? or how much of this is Luka back to hurting again? I know he's doing.
Well,
I know he's always.
yes.
He's always messing with that knee, and I know that you shouldn't overreact to just because he's touching it a lot. But it was hard to not notice that.
Well,
he
Luka
didn't
was
seem very
asked
good.
after the game, "Hey, how are you feeling physically?" He said, "Great." It was not convincing. I mean, he's banged up.
He was also touching his chest.
Yeah, he had like a chat. Whatever. He's banged up. But you know what, dude? Yeah, he's hurt, and he's going to be hurt. And he's not like his way. When he said great, he's basically like, dude, I'm not going to sit up here and make excuses.
Okay,
Like,
fine then. I won't let him
whatever.
make any.
But Lou Dort is doing an awesome job. Chet Holmgren is a potential future defensive player of the year. Like, the only reason I'm not going to say he's a for sure future defensive player of the year is because there's an alien in San Antonio who's going to hog those things. Cason Wallace, here's a Stats Williams special. Cason Wallace has allowed opponents to shoot 26%, 25.9% when he's the primary defender. It's the lowest field goal percentage allowed among guys who have defended at least 50 shots this postseason.
Might be a good guy to start.
Yeah, it might make a little bit of sense. He closed. I'll say that.
Certainly did.
Josh Giddey's minutes, and Josh Giddey was a plus in this game, which Dagenhart made sure to point out, and he's also played 12 minutes, which
by the way, a lot of that was nonsense because he was in there for free throws as an inbounder at the end of the game. And for the people in Oklahoma City who are going to be like, oh, why are you talking about Josh Giddey again? Why do you care? They won the game. Game 2, they start the game -9 and 4 minutes with him on the court. He gets pulled. In game 3, they're -4 and 6 minutes before he gets pulled in the first quarter. In game 4, they're -8 and 5 minutes before he gets pulled in the first quarter. That's -21 in 15 minutes. You might, in a close series, might not want to go down 5, 6, 7, 8 points in the first 5 minutes of the game, every game, for really no reason other than hubris and just refusing to acknowledge what we have been talking about for months, which is that this is an awkward fit. And while he's a good player, this is not a good fit to have him out there in this grouping. And you should have a guy who can space the floor and defend next to Shea.
I always thought that was pronounced hubris. Hubris? That's interesting.
It is actually hubris, yes.
Cool. 17, 11, 13, 12. That's Josh Giddey's minutes in this series. Obviously, he's not a piece of the winning formula here. Jalen Williams has not shot the ball well in this series, has not scored nearly as efficiently as he did during the regular season, during the first round. He's been the primary defender on Kyrie.
Yes.
Dude, Kyrie and Luka combined are averaging 37 points per game in this series. Luka by himself averaged 34 in the regular season. Those two combined averaged 59.5. It's 37 in this series. The miracle here is, despite that, it's a 2-2 series. PJ Washington has saved their ass.
It's a trap.
But it's the Thunder have done an incredible job defensively. Luka's compromised physically. I think the Mavericks got to figure out how to get Kyrie rolling.
Absolutely.
And we talked about that balance between. We talked about that balance between, making the right play and taking over. The trust and the takeover. I think there's got to be more takeover on Kyrie.
It's a trap.
He's had 2 games.
PJ Washington had 19 shots in game 4, and Kyrie had 11.
Yeah.
And I know Kyrie's that PJ Washington made those shots in games 2 and 3. That's what the Thunder want.
Kyrie has had 19 shots in a game in the series.
The Mavs will go as far as Kyrie and Luka take them. And again, the fact it's tied 2-2 here is a miracle. They won games when those guys combined for 38 and 44. That's shocking.
I mean, look, it's shocking. Kyrie's had two 9-point games in the series. And I also think that
before this, he had 1 single-digit scoring game in the playoffs in his entire career. And in those games, he had 11 assists and 9 assists. But again, they've got to have Kyrie and or Luka cooking. Neither, it's going to be really difficult, as well as they're playing defensively. And they are absolutely playing they've become a damn good defensive team.
That's their game plan. Their game plan is to make Kyrie pass. And he is. And, PJ Washington is beating the percentages and hurt them badly. But you can tell they're not changing their strategy.
Well, in
They
this
love-
last game, most of his threes, I'd have to look back to say most, but at least a few of those threes he knocked down were like offensive rebound, kick it back out. So it wasn't necessarily, and that's the thing. When I asked Dagenhart about that, he said, if you look at it when he scored 29 and 27, he said, if you look at the 27, about 15 of those were what you would say were game plan points. Like, hey, those are shots we're willing to let him have. And then there was stuff, whether it's transition, whether they were to get him an early post up, that sort of thing. But he did say, hey, like, you got to kind of throw the percentages out, the season long sample size out when a guy's as hot as PJ Washington has been in this series.
19 points on 19 shots. They were toasting to that.
No question.
Take that.
And I also do think, for as well as he's guarding Kyrie at times, again, if you're not starting this insane starting lineup that obviously is not good, if you put Case and Wallace out there, or Aaron Wiggins, or Isaiah Joe, or whoever, but I would say Case and Wallace is the guy that should put there. If you have him guarding Kyrie, you can have Jalen Williams then on PJ Washington. Not that you're trying to stop PJ Washington, but it's a little bit of an easier matchup for Jalen Williams. And then he's probably going to have a little more juice on offense, or you can then have him switch onto Kyrie at times instead of having him do that every possession. I know I'm harping on it a lot. It's just unbelievable that a team that could win the title is quite obviously hampering its ability to do so by actively choosing to start a lineup that is not the optimal lineup. And this is something that's blatantly obvious to anybody watching. This isn't some kind of rocket science assessment. Oh man, why does a Josh Giddey fit? Like, it doesn't mean he shouldn't play in the series. Have him run the offense when Shea isn't on the court, and have him out there with shooting, run some pick and rolls with Chet, and like, he can make plays and do stuff. But it's just not. It doesn't make sense to have him out there as a non-shooter and non-defender in this grouping. And again, they're minus 21 in 15 minutes to start the last 3 games. Like, why are you intentionally putting yourself in a hole for no reason?
Yeah.
Dagenhart won't answer starting lineup questions.
Shocker.
30 minutes before is when you'll get it. But he stuck with them all season. He was asked, he didn't even wait for he interrupted the question before it got to the Josh Giddey part. He knew it was going to be asked, and he said, we will consider everything. So we shall see. But again,
the starting lineup
I would believe that
when
when they change their starting lineup.
Well, the starting lineup in the second half, the last 2 games, has been changed.
Yes, which is again why it's all the more insane they're not doing it at the beginning of the game.
Well, game 5 on Wednesday is going to be a very big one. And a lot of guys, it's their first time playing in situation. And Rick Carlisle said, it looked like our guys were the first time playing in the situation. So a great test for the young Thunder with the opportunity to, get that third win.
And you mentioned young Thunder. Hayward has been pulled. The plug's been pulled there. He's contributed a grand total of 0 points during these playoffs. By the way, the thought did cross my mind. Can you imagine if the Thunder would have traded for PJ Washington instead of Hayward? The Mavericks wouldn't be here right now. And like, the Thunder would have, they need a power forward at some point.
They were negotiating with the Hornets, one would assume, because they did the Hayward deal.
Yes.
So.
But how many points have the Thunder gotten during these playoffs from a player older than 25?
We've already been talking about the 0.
The answer is 2.
It's still 2. Kenrich Williams had 1 bucket in the first round. It's still 2. It's unbelievable.
Well, we'll see if it ends up costing them.
I'll say this, dude, if ever a team is going to crumble under playoff pressure, you can't score for 3 quarters. You're down 14 early in the third quarter in that game. They didn't crumble there. And Shea, he's 25 years old. This is his first time as the go-to guy in the playoffs. He's had a couple playoff series under his belt, but he was a complimentary player. Couldn't be a whole lot cooler than he was in the fourth quarter of that game.
He was awesome. I mean, it was big time. It was big time watching.
The first half, the Mavericks were just playing tremendously, and the Thunder just stayed attached. And that was a tremendous accomplishment. And they left the door open for Shea to carry him home, which he did.
Also, Luka missed a free throw with 10 seconds left. They had a chance to tie it up. He goes to the line.
on a questionable foul.
Well,
No. It was a
I
clear
don't know
foul.
about all that. He
It was
missed
a
the
clear
first.
foul.
They're
It was a
down 2.
questionable foul.
He missed the first free throw.
Okay.
The Mavericks missed 11 free throws in that game. It's a lot. The Thunder.
Yeah, on a
The Mavs
tight
were
game,
11.
on a 4-point game.
Wait, was it 11? It might have been.
The Mavs were 12 for 23.
There you
The
go.
Thunder were 23 for 24 in a 4-point game.
By the way, Dirk missed 11 free throws the entire 2011 title run.
Ouch. Okay. Bontemps was at the game in Cleveland on Monday night. Cavs lose.
So was LeBron.
So is LeBron.
Who got more attention?
I've talked about it 75 times today. I'm not
Obviously
talking about the
LeBron.
pod. I'm sorry. You can
What do you
find
think
it
about LeBron beating Cleveland?
I just want to know. The only thing I have only one thing about LeBron and Cleveland that I haven't already said on a bunch of other platforms. You can go find it.
I would say our platform's the most important, but that's
I would too. But thanks for
not at 2 a.m.
JB.
Not at 2 a.m.
There we go. Back to the wine.
Somebody from the Cavs left LeBron a bottle of wine at his seat, and there was something written on the wine in cursive, and it's signed. And there's some photos.
Oh.
And I want I don't look at my mentions, but send it to if anybody can figure out what's written on that bottle. There's some photos you just can't. I need the CSI where
Put
they go
the
enhance.
YouTube comments.
Enhance. Yeah, Jackson, I'll look at the YouTube comments. Enhance. I need the enhance. I want to know. I'll just take whoever's signature it is. But if you can see the message on there, bonus points. We'll send you some gear or something. Jackson's got some gear. If you can provide, if you can't just be a fake.
Jackson has gear?
I think so.
I need some gear.
I don't have any, but I think Jackson does. Bontemps.
That's all right.
Bontemps. I would have loved to have seen the Cavs, how they reacted to a Game 5 in Boston, and I also would have loved it when it was 2-2, and I would also have loved
Cavs Corner, sponsored by the end of the season.
Sponsored by Opus One,
it's coming to an end.
Wine.
Unfortunately for the Cavs.
I would have loved to have seen the Celtics play under a modicum of pressure this postseason by having to.
I mean, a modicum of pressure at some point in the playoffs. How about? I mean, the Celtics have now.
It'll come.
Hopefully someday. I mean, they've now played 5 games against a team. Actually 6 games now.
Because Donovan Mitchell was out.
We didn't with the team missing their 20 missing a 20-point a game score. And if they play the Knicks in the next round, I mean, I think there's a decent chance it'll be 7 on Wednesday. We'll see if Donovan's able to play, but we've seen calf injuries in the playoffs. They are not 1-game absences. So I certainly am not overly confident, despite the fact that Donovan is questionable, he'll be able to play, which stinks because he's been on an unbelievable run. And I thought, even after Game 3, I thought there was some stuff, like we talked about on the pod Sunday night, that they could do to give the Celtics some trouble. And then without him, I mean, they just don't have any firepower. But it's just a bummer. I mean, it was a fun atmosphere in Cleveland. The fans were into it. Obviously, LeBron being there was a lot of juice for that. And they got off to a hot start early, and they hit some early threes and hung around, and they competed. I mean, it was a close game, and with a couple of minutes to go, it was the first clutch game Boston has played in 9 playoff games. And the Cavs hung around, but they just didn't have the firepower to win, and the Celtics held them off. And now Karis LeVert is questionable with a bone bruise in his knee. He's the guy who replaced Donovan Mitchell in the starting lineup. I don't know if he's going to be able to go either. Jared Allen seems unlikely he's going to play. He's missed the last 7 games with a bruised rib.
He hasn't played in weeks.
Yeah, it's hard to see him walking out there down 3-1. The Cavs got through the first round.
Sam Merrill available?
He's available.
There's going to be a lot of Sam Merrill. It's going to be a lot of Darius Garland. Going to be a lot of Evan Mobley. I mean, they're going to shoot a lot of threes. They shot almost 50 threes in Game 4. They might shoot 60 in Game 5. And
yeah. While we're at that, after the game, Dan Gilbert, Cavs owner, sends out a tweet. And I didn't understand this tweet. Hold on, let me get
What
it.
was the font?
It was in whatever
It was
your
not Comic Sans.
Okay.
whatever your computer is set to is what you're.
How many
gonna read
people
about.
listening to the pod actually know what the Comic Sans reference is?
I
Probably
hope
not
a
that
lot.
many.
If you're a
We're
big
all
enough
old.
basketball nerd to listen to us, you know what it is.
You can Google it.
You can definitely
so
Google it.
Here's the tweet that Dan sent out, and we will decode. Actually, Bontemps cracked the code. I didn't understand it. Hey, Cleveland, I thought our guys fought hard tonight, especially without two of our best players. If there's one thing we have, it's talented. It's one thing we have learned. It's that you have to work hard 24/7, if you know what I mean, in parentheses. You have to work hard 24/7, if you know what I mean, in parentheses, to win in this league. Let's go get game 5 and bring this back to Cleveland. All that rah stuff, which, Dan's known for, he's super optimistic. That was nothing. The reason he sent the tweet. He sent the tweet to make the 24/7 reference, which was to what, Bontemps?
The Celtics had 24 free throws in game 4, and the Cavs had 7, which the Cavs made a lot of noises about after the game, which I was very annoyed by because, listen, the Cavs played super hard in this game. They were incredibly competitive. Darius Garland played great. Evan Mobley's playing on a bum foot. He played well. Like they fought back in the game. I thought there was a lot to be optimistic about, despite the fact that they lost. Then they come in and they just complain about the fouls. They shot 48 threes in this game.
He should get fined for just being passive aggressive. Passive aggressive referee bitching. That's $100 grand.
Forget 100 that. Grand. I mean, JB Bickerstaff came in and basically acted like there was he didn't quite go as far as Rick Carlisle, but he came up close to it. Like, oh, it should just be a fair whistle. Like, there's nobody else on the Cavs that's really going to get to the line other than Donovan Mitchell, and he's not playing.
I mean, there was a couple of times where they could have gotten a foul, but it was not worth making that the focal reply.
What you should have walked in and said was, I'm incredibly proud of my guys. They fought their asses off. We figured out some stuff. If we actually make some threes, because they went 15 for 48 from 3, they go 20 for 48 from 3, they maybe win the game. And if they could easily go 20 for 48 from 3 in game 5, they got a bunch of good 3-point shooters. And they should take 63s in this game. They should just say, to hell with it, and bomb away and hope that they hit shots.
Yeah, this does remind me of the line of the night, and it's getting back to Wolves Nuggets. Rudy Gobert got fined $75 grand for a quick little money sign, which he's got history there, and it's an incredibly dumb thing to do.
Yeah, you noticed it the second it happened. He didn't get called anything for it, but you hit the group text that said, oh, man, Rudy's going to be in trouble for that one.
And he did it with both hands, which seconds earlier, both hands were in Jamal Murray's back as his arms extended. So it wasn't like a controversial foul, but he money signed at his back turn to Scott Foster, got fined $75 grand. So, which he deserved.
Wait, Scott had a back-to-back?
No, this game 3. They didn't.
Oh, okay.
Foster was in New York Giants.
Yeah, this was game 3.
But the finals announced today. Chris Finch in his pregame's asked about it. This is good. He said, I'd like to see the itemized receipt because if it's $75,000 for the money gesture, then it must be $10,000 for the towel and $15,000 for the heating pad.
That's pretty good.
Obviously talking about Jamal Murray getting $25K.
I did not see that quote, and Finch is one of the best quotes in the league, and that was beautiful.
Finch is a great quote. That's not surprising. But it just the whole thing
Wolves didn't win the game, but they won the pregame coaches pressers.
They did, and the whole line of stuff out of Cleveland just annoyed me because I thought it was really impressive how the Cavs fought in that game, and they find out now for the game officially, Donovan Mitchell's not playing. Is there every reason to think, well, we got no chance to win this game. We can't score without this guy, and they fought their asses off and played great, and like if you walk in and say, "Oh, the refs screwed us," like, I mean, come on. Like,
well, Darius Garland, who hasn't had a good postseason, he had no points in the first quarter and ended with 30. So that's something. On the Celtics side of things, I thought that Jason Tatum, both games in Cleveland, he didn't shoot the ball well. I think he was 11.
He hasn't shot the ball well all playoffs.
But I thought he had 21. I think he had 21 free throws in the 2 games in Cleveland. I think he made all 21, something like that. went to the basket and generated contact and got over 30 points in both games. In road playoff games, that's not nothing.
Yeah, he's been aggressive.
Drew Holiday has been absolutely dominant defensively on the Cavs. Anybody they put him on is taken out of the game, which bodes well for later on. Derek White's in a shooting slump after being super red hot. I guess that's not surprising.
He and Drew Holiday and Jalen Brown have both used their physicality in the 2 games in Cleveland to really impose their will on the Cavs and make sure whenever Cleveland started to make a run, they would use their either on defense to make a play or to get into the paint and score on offense. They use their size and strength and athleticism to sort of tip the game back in Boston's favor at a bunch of different points. They were both great in both games.
Yeah. So, the Celtics, people are talking about how they're unimpressive. And I mean, I guess to a certain extent, they haven't, won every game by 40.
I mean, let's be honest. They played a Heat team that was decimated by injury in the first round. Yeah. And the Heat, the Heat had one of the greatest jump shooting performances in the history of the sport in game 2, and they lost. I didn't think it was a huge deal at the time. The Celtics then pounded them the next 3 games. And look, they didn't show up in game 2 in the series. They didn't really show up in game 1 in the series either, frankly. The Cavs were just terrible. But, they deserved to lose game 2. And they went on the road and did what they were supposed to do. But, we've talked so much about how great these West series have been, particularly in these conference semifinals, and you're seeing real toe-to-toe stuff. And in the East, you've got, this Knicks team that's ravaged by injury. You got this Pacer team that can't really take care of the moment. We saw it against Milwaukee. They struggled to beat a very beat-up Milwaukee team, now in the same spot with the Knicks. And you got the Celtics, where we're 10 games we're coming up on 10 games into the playoffs for them, and it feels like they're playing games in November.
I mean, listen,
these games do not feel like playoff games.
You can sum it up like this. There's a reason we assigned Bontemps to the series. It's not very compelling.
There's a reason I'm the one ESPN employee at the games at the series. I can tell you that.
But there's a reason why he stopped in New York on the way to Boston.
Yeah. I was going to say Bontemps that was to back to New York. Let me see these Knicks. Let me see these Knicks pages.
That was to come home and see K-Bon and change out my luggage. But
MacMahon, he'd been on the road for 4 days. I've been on the road for 10.
I was on the road for a week.
Bontemps probably.
You're right. I take that back.
4 days probably too.
I take it back.
He's like a Tetris packer.
But yeah, it's just we'll see how this other series goes. But I mean, the Celtics have just been. I mean, they were the best team in the league in the regular season, and they just haven't.
They had the most wins in the league. They had the most wins in the league during the regular season.
Well, whatever. They had the best net rating. They had the most wins. Whatever. They had a tremendous regular season. And they've felt like they've played an extra 9 regular season games, and it's going to be 10 on Wednesday, and we'll see if that changes in the conference finals.
They're 7-2 in the playoffs, and 6 of the wins are by double digits.
Yeah, and they haven't had.
You can say their opponents are all messed up, but they're not. They're taking care of business.
I think the biggest question for the Celtics is, when does Porzingis come back, and is he going to be close to 100% come finals?
Well, I'll just say this. If the Celtics play like they have over the first 9 games of the playoffs, they ain't beating whoever comes out of the West. They're going to have to go up a level. Now, they also haven't had to do anything, which is part of the problem, because they're not really being challenged in these games. Mm-hmm. But you look at the crucible that these West teams are going through, to this point, the Celtics haven't really had to deal with any of that. Now, if the Cavs have been fully healthy, and Donovan Mitchell's playing the way he is, then yeah, I think things might have been different. But
if Donovan Mitchell was healthy for game 4, I think that would be 2-2. If the Celtics played the way they did.
Yeah, never know. And that sums up really the overall situation, right? The Celtics have been able to sort of coast through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. So, and look, Porzingis being out is a huge piece, but they might have to. We'll see if he has some other health issue going forward. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
They earned this seed. So
I learned a new word: crucible.
Good job.
It is
Good
a
thing
Learn how to
Ceramic
say
shirt.
hubris,
By
and
the
you learn
way.
what crucible is. There you go.
a
big man.
ceramic or metal container in which metals or other substances may be melted or subjected to very high temperatures.
I don't think that's I don't think that's the
No, I don't
exact
think so
definition
either.
that I was going
That's-
for,
that's
but
the
That's what it
noun.
says
that
in
is
the
a definition.
dictionary.
Yeah, that's the noun.
There's
So he
two
just says it now.
definitions. There's a second definition there, pal.
There is. Wow.
Yes, there is.
A
Yes.
situation of severe trial,
There you
or in
go.
which different elements interact, leading to the creation of something new.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
Well used there, Randolph.
You
High
really
School.
learned something there, buddy.
That's why he was the captain of the basketball team that probably went like 2-26 his senior year.
We definitely did not go 2-26. We had an excellent team.
Playing against
All
a bunch
right.
of farm boys. Probably played like
Hey,
that Iowa girls 3-on-3 style.
nope. No,
I think
sir.
Oklahoma girls used to play that like not that long ago, actually.
I'll bet that. I bet they ran the motion offense.
We have a great basketball history at Randolph High School, I will tell you.
Did you run the motion offense?
No, we didn't.
No. Okay. All right. Well, that was a Hoop Collective brought to you by Xfinity. Thank you to Bontemps. Thank you to MacMahon. Thank you to Jackson, our producer. Thank you for listening and watching. And we'll have some more playoff excitement coming at you later this week.
Adios, amigos.